Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to another video, or let's say podcast on this channel, where I love to share all things spirituality, especially things about spiritual science, mysticism, Christian mysticism, and everything that falls underneath. Tonight or today, I have a wonderful guest, a dear friend of mine, Andrea from Only Saint Sleep account on Instagram and on Substack. And I invited her, or like we figured out we should bring these conversations that we have privately also on a public platform, so that also other people might get some insights, knowledge, wisdom. Who knows what goes through us? Maybe just another information that might be useful. And yeah, Andrea is a wonderful friend of mine and somebody who I also follow for quite some time on Instagram and on Substack because I love her wisdom and ability to merge the worlds of psychology and mysticism and spirituality in such a profound way that our daily dynamics and struggles that we go through as human beings are so nicely described by her also in a spiritual way. So you get kind of sense through her work what's going on a psychological, material, earthly plane, and also at the same time on a spiritual plane, because we are spiritual beings and we are material beings. So we love to merge those two worlds. And we came today together in order to talk about the feminine impulse of the age, or the feminine of the age, because this is a very important impulse now in this day and age, since we are entering the age of Sophia, the age of Holy Spirit, the Aquarian age, and we have a strong impulse of the feminine, of the divine feminine. And today, yeah, we will talk a lot about it, about what we observe in our modern culture as like different impulses or streams of feminine. And yeah, please join us and enjoy in this talk. But before we start, I would first like to welcome you, Andrea, and to thank you so much for coming here with me. And if you would like to just say a few words about yourself, how did you, yeah, become so inspired to speak and write about these beautiful things that not so many people, yeah, can do actually.
First, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here and honored about your words. They're very kind. And what really inspired me is that I feel for a lot of women, it's blending those two worlds together is very difficult. And the feminine mysteries have been misdirected, or they're in so many different places that it's hard to reconcile. And then reconcile it in light of the Christic mysteries can be very difficult. And I think having these conversations and pointing it out and looking at culture and looking our life as a vehicle of our values, of our spirit, makes it be so much more alive. And I think that in particular for women, makes it really is the purpose of life. You know, it's the point of just opening a book and saying, okay, I know all of these things, but then you look at your life, you look at your relationships, you look at your day to day, just you in the kitchen. It's just you want something that's truly integrated, and I think that that's what makes life magical if you see that link. So I've tried to look at that link and from my own perspectives and my own occult research and my own mystical experiences and kind of blend that all together into my observations of the world. And yeah, I think that that's been pretty much my journey, and it's an exploration and having these conversations with you that I think we're tuning into something.
Yeah, we're totally tuning in for quite some time now. Yes, 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 and I love this. You are one of those rare people that I could reach out and talk about, like the things that usually you wouldn't hear in the mainstream spirituality, or, you know, like topics that are covered by some great teachers, you know, which are super important. And it's very important that we know about spirituality in a macrocosmic way, and, you know, these transcendental principles and truths and whatnot. And yet, on the other hand, sometimes we lack this earthly perspective. Like, how does this translate really, really into matter? Like, how does any of these spiritual impulses or, you know, streams, how can we see that really in our daily lives? And it's also one of my like core missions is to bring spirituality in our lives so that we can align with ourselves in our daily life and really, really align with our higher purpose, or like with our higher self in a way, and to translate that into daily life. Like, how does this really look like? And it's not just this great career or, you know, being some, I don't know, great personality in that way, historical personality, but rather like, how does this look like in home, in our relationships, in the way how we dress ourselves, how we talk to each other, our relationships, like I said, and all of that. And yeah, and in a way, feminine mysteries are part of that conversation, I would say, where the feminine is, of course, very much related to matter, right? Matter, mother. So we now finally have like some kind of open door to explore the feminine side of God, right? And funny enough, it's like you said, now also this era where we got all of this information and knowledge that comes from Christ's stream and the feminine mysteries within Christ's stream, which it's kind of hard to reconcile, right? And we will touch upon it now when we talk about different streams. But I find this like such a beautiful topic, which like it seems like it combines the opposites, like almost seemingly not possible to find the common thread between Christ and the feminine, right? And yet they are so like one, right? It's impossible not to have them in one conversations. But of course, there is a whole journey you have to go through to get there, where you first have to kind of get lost in different impulses that we will talk about, and in order to find the middle path. So I would like to start now the overall topic about the feminine of our ages, with just like a little intro in terms of when we speak about any impulse, spiritual impulse, we will always have polarity, right? Like the extreme of any impulse. And then we will have like the balanced path, the middle path, right? So also within the feminine, Andrea and I noticed that there are different streams there, that we have like some kind of like extreme polarization within the feminine impulse, and that we are slowly figuring out what is the middle path of the feminine stream. And in the mysticism, we know that this the middle path, or the one that is aligned with Christ, is called Sophia, or like the divine feminine. So would you like to, Andrea, talk about like the impulses within feminine that go into the like regressive or like extreme polarization, and how does that translate into our daily life? By the way, we will talk a lot about today about the pop culture. We will use also some celebrities or some trends that we observe that might be like in one or another polarity, which doesn't mean like that we want to like condemn it as pure evil or anything like that, but that we see that there is something out of balance. And yeah, we would just like to bring an open conversations. And of course, everybody who watched this is totally open to write in comments their opinions. And also, please just be open heart, be with the open heart and mind. And whatever you hear in this podcast or anytime, just please filter through your heart. Like you don't have to take everything from here as like a dogmatic fact or anything like that. We're just exchanging here our opinions, and you are an individual, so you have the free will to just filter out everything that is not for you. So yeah, just wanted to give this little disclaimer. And yeah, please feel free to start with any of these extreme polarities within the feminine if you want.
Absolutely. Well, there's so much to say. I mean, I think when I look at the world right now, I think there has been a very deep wound of sexual shame. And that wound, I think, has always been a controversial conversation in spirituality. Because, like you said, balance is everything. And for women in particular in their spiritual journeys, it's always this relationship to your body, to matter. You're always in conversation with the material world, whether it's in finances, whether it's in your relationships, sex, all of these different taboo topics that are part of our relationship to the world. And I think, the mysteries have been mostly talked about from a male point, or not a male, but a masculine point of view, which I don't think is a bad thing at all. I think, like, if you zoom out and you really see the purpose of that was to shift away from this pluralistic old feminine impulse and move into the era of the I and individuation, and then in the future re-enter into the Holy Spirit, into that era of Sophia, where we re-enter into plurality, but as individuals. So in the day-to-day life, I think a lot of women feel this split in themselves, and I see a lot of good conversations happening, like this rise of somatic experiencing and all of that. I think that has opened the conversation for women to perceive themselves like there is something holy about my body in this world where, like, not everything is reading, not everything is just, I love Steiner, but not everything is reading of Steiner. You go back to your life and you face anxiety and you face heartbreak and material losses and everything of this world, and where does that knowledge go? Like, what's the point of talking about the cosmic side of things when in your day-to-day life you feel very disconnected? So I think a lot of women have spoken about conversations surrounding, like, for example, the somatic aspect, but then also you have a lot of women talking about sexuality and, like, this sexual spirituality and trying to contend with that wound and bring light to it and explain it and saying, well, actually, no, our sexuality is holy and it's this thing. But then you see that there's certain pitfalls there that occur, as we'll talk about them deeper. And they're pitfalls, I think, for a lot of women. They're not made, we can't demonize people. We can't say, like, that woman is bad because she's using this system. It's not that. I mean, sometimes I think we explore things from our wounds, and the other day, I saw this quote on Substack of this guy who said, so many times people are writing and they're writing from their wounds. Like, it's like the wounded healer archetype, and you're really in a conversation with yourself. And I think that that's important, that so many movements are made in compensation of a deeper wound, like feminism. Even the movement in men of, like, masculinity and all of these different kinds of conversations, sometimes there is a deeper question being asked there, like respecting men or respecting women, or, hey, there are these issues that women are being oppressed, or, like, there is this issue that sexuality has been profane. And so people talk about it, they create movements, but then sometimes there's these blind spots, and it's those blind spots that then the forces of Lucifer and Armand take hold. And then because you feel so attached to that ideology or to that movement, like, say, I love all of the somatic world. I think that's of incredible importance, but I also think if we don't add the spiritual layer, it's just pure body expression. It's like a sensual spirituality. It's not cosmic. But then at the same time, you can't get too cosmic and deny the earthly. So it's this thin line that we're always walking in as women. You experience that thin line in yourself, in motherhood, even if you're not a mother, in your life. Women's cycles are incredibly transformative. So I think understanding that line is not just in having these conversations, but in yourself. And many times those impulses of Ahriman and Lucifer come through those wounds. And in specific, for example, like in the Luciferic stream, if you were to go back in time, and you even see this, like, you and I have talked about that before this conversation about like Blavatsky and the Luciferic stream there, and how people could judge that. People could say, well, Blavatsky is a bad person, let's deny theosophy altogether. But I think even woman to woman, you understand that there's a grace. That you sometimes your own blind spots cause you to attune yourself to a certain stream. And then you don't know it yet, but you start talking about that. And just like it happened to someone so great as Blavatsky, it could happen to any woman. Even myself, like you're writing about things, and sometimes, and even more so now, because there's so much trauma and so much pain, and you're at the same time, there's a desire in us to heal and to transform, but there's also this desire in like trying to find meaning to your pain. And then all of a sudden you have all of these different kind of like half truth, half harmonic, luciferic, like quasi things around, and you're like, what do we do with this? And I think establishing that's really important for a woman, because we can't shame. We can't just say things like that person's wrong, or even like different things that we'll talk about, like the trad wife, like this thing, because there's a truth to that. Like there's every woman has a freedom to say, well, I feel in myself more aligned to this belief or to this belief system, and much of it, I think every person has a different spiritual background. I do think even if you don't remember your past lives, I do think that influences on top of your personal wounds makes you subject to, say, lean more into tantra or lean more into theosophy or to the new age. And even in your life, like it's possible there's times in your life that you resonate more to certain mystics. I mean, even in a music aspect, like there's a phase of your life you listen to this artist on repeat. And I think we really understand ourselves through that.
Yeah, big time. You spoke about the Lucifer and Ahriman, just for some folks who you probably, if you follow me, you know about these two impulses, but it's very important just to understand that these regressive impulses are nothing but the one polarity went to the extreme, more or less. And like you said, like everything has its own truth, and it's not about condemning or cutting them out, like that's not even possible. We want to redeem, right, and integrate those regressive impulses, meaning Lucifer tends to be more regressive on the in the feminine stream, in terms of being very disembodied and forcing people to be very superficial, not being embodied, right? So it's basically, everything opposite to what we talk about, somatics and stuff, where we are drawn more into the body and learning about the wisdom of it, right? And then we have Ahriman, who is more common in this extreme materialism, very much connected with technology and seeing everything almost as a machine, right, including the feminine body. So those are the two main extreme impulses that we see, which are anyways, like in general, generally speaking, they're present. But within the feminine stream, it's quite interesting how in feminine spirituality, Lucifer tends to bring us always to the past. That's what I noticed. Like it loves to bring the old teachings, but not like tweaked and adapted to our modern day, but like just as a raw version, take it from the past and bringing it into the present, and which tends to make chaos within human consciousness, because our consciousness has evolved. So what Andrea said at the beginning is that, especially in the times before Christ, we had a strong feminine impulse in general. That's why we had matriarchy, paganism, all kinds of pluralistic perspectives around God, right? We had many gods, which are, now understood as spiritual hierarchies and whatnot. So we had this like huge, like very long time, very big part of our evolution where we were very, embedded in the feminine impulse. And then everything shifted since Christ came, and we had to learn to become individuals, right? And now we came to this part where not only that we have to learn how to be individuals, but also how to build connections and communities in a way where we respect each other's individuality, where nobody has to lose their higher self, right, in order to belong to the tribe. So this is just like a little broader context for people to understand what we're talking also about. And I love how you mentioned that yes, the Luciferic stream is very dominant in all topics around sexuality. We see also very much strong impulse in the New Age, I would say, as well, in terms of trying to bypass the earth, more or less, like bypassing the human like experience on the earth, trying to go up as soon as possible without first integrating, the shadow and all your parts. So when we talked about Lucifer in our conversations, especially in the feminine stream, you mentioned the impulse of Lilith, and I would like if you can touch upon it. Who is Lilith from your perspective? Because this it is a name that can trigger a lot of people, because Lilith is very much perceived as a positive figure or archetype, especially in psychology. However, we do see certain dangers with that, because Lilith was a spirit, like she was a being. It's not just an archetype, like just a story. It was a real being, and there were some things that that happened in the past that are still influencing us. So maybe if you can touch upon that, and maybe also some examples of where do we see Lilith in the modern context, like in our culture.
Yeah, Lilith is a controversial figure, I think, mainly because I think women feel that shame of like the sexual shame of being the temptation. And I think all of these words like purity, temptation, if they're not understood from the place of like, how is the soul formed? Everyone has a soul. The way I see it is the soul is a feminine aspect and the spirit is a masculine aspect. And so the spirit isn't necessarily something that is inherently good. Like that's where the Luciferic delusion comes from. It's in thinking, well, all spiritual things are good. I can just open myself to the spiritual world, or I can just open myself to creative expression, and everything coming through me will be good. And I think women may feel a little ashamed of that because women are natural creators. They're natural receptors. They're always in tune. And there's a part of you that's like, well, I can't control my desire. I can't control this void, if you will. But I think in understanding this, it's not limited to women, but the feminine principle. And in not being formed, that's where you get Lilith. So Lilith is the embodiment of the soul deformed. And you can see this in Revelations. You can see this in just even on as a psychological process. What happens to someone when they have no order? When women hear order, especially if they're coming from a religious background, they may hear that and say, oh, no, I don't want order. But the thing is, and it's kind of like, and we've talked about this, like a prodigal son situation. Like you leave and then you realize, like, actually, these things won't liberate me. They're based off my pain. And order is a very good thing. And order can exist within your self expression, within desire, within all of these beautiful feminine experiences. It just makes you live a life in which your soul is actually protected in the spiritual world, and it's protected here, even down to your earthly choices. And many things in this world obviously don't facilitate order. And because people have this understanding of order, like through the harmonic lens, which we'll get into that, it makes it be like order is like, don't talk, you listen to me. And it's not like and as a woman, it's like we're naturally like, no, I'm going to do things my way. I want to know how this is for myself. And so I think then that's where the Luciferic bend comes in like freedom, being just doing things for the sake of freedom, like this a sex positive expression, which we'll get into those things. And I'm not someone who has very like I would like to look at things from multiple perspectives, but I see how that even this idea of like sex positive, I think would have worked in an age where we didn't have the I, where everyone has no ego, and so the way that we would relate to each other, there was love. But now we are individuals, and in that we have an egoism, and that's why you have monogamy. That's why you have boundaries. That's why even the way our relationships change because of that. And so, taking that into account, I think Lilith was has that psychological dimension, but I also think that it's both literal and metaphorical, and like an allegory, because I also do think that there was an event in which the form of the soul was hijacked by Lucifer, and that's why you see her as like mother of abominations, child eater, as both something literal, like perhaps consciousness at that time could have facilitated um, certain things that now wouldn't be able to happen, like the incubus succubus situation that now is not so easily translated. But I think she's also allegorical, and she's often mentioned as this figure of like feminine freedom and this and that, but really it's the destruction to life. And life, when women hear that sometimes and they come through this perspective of feminism or these different social questions, they think, well, that impedes on my freedom. But it's not freedom as we understand it, but spiritual freedom. Like the freedom to create life is not just in the biological sense, but the sense of what is life within a spiritual context is not how we understand it. Because we're it's like we like to debate on these things, and we're like, no, it's my freedom, it's not. But really, when you look at the actual dynamics occurring spiritually, is that yes, there is a responsibility to freedom, to create, to life. And Lucifer takes that and applies this old morality and like old way of relating to each other. So we don't have to understand freedom as this, we have to have responsibility. Otherwise, we are like Lilith. And it's not just women, but culture. I see culture as an embodiment of Lilith herself. It's not a woman. I see it as the soul. Like we're all individuals, yes, but like the collective oversoul right now is just deformed. And I think people may hear that and they say, oh, it's the feminine's fault. No, it's never one side. There's always this dance occurring between two parts. And it's not a woman, it's not a man. There's women that are overtaken by the Lilith stream. But even then, it's like I don't see it as necessarily like we aren't born that way. It's through our wounds that we begin to be that way. Our soul begins to be formed that way. And then we start to adhere to certain spiritual beliefs. And then that's when the soul is left to whatever baser spiritual influences there are, and that happens to be in anthroposophy viewed as Lucifer and Ahriman, but even like all the seven classical demons.
Right. Yeah.
Like in each of them pertaining to a sin. And again, these are maybe a little controversial, but it's not controversial when you understand the esoteric dimension. It's not saying denying you of your body or denying you of these things, but quite literally what happens when you're not tuned to the time, you go back and you start anchoring in those lower places. And I see Lilith as the embodiment of wounded feminine consciousness, or the wounded soul element. Is it's so desperate to take on whatever that it will accept whatever. And you even see that translate quite literally, like if you were to look at an earthly dynamic, like a woman, you just accept anything, any kind of relationship. And inside, you may lie to yourself and say that's empowerment. But in your heart, you know that's not true. And sometimes it's very sad to accept that within yourself. And when you even move into greater, more complex spiritual and collective dynamics, I think it is a wound that we all grieve because we exist within that world, within a world where the soul has been deformed, where sex has been overtaken by darker forces, but where the way that we dress, there's such I was thinking
polarization.
yeah, I was thinking, yeah, such polarization, and it's intense. It's intense, and then you awaken to your spirituality, and it can feel empowering to look at Lilith and say, yeah, like she's the reclaim of sexuality, but she isn't the reclaim of sexuality. And in fact, if you go down that rabbit hole far enough, even within spiritual groups, like if you've I'm not saying all retreats, but like I've seen this like retreats in like I don't know, like Peru or something, or Tulum.
Yeah, popular.
And if you follow it and you see how the Luciferic and Lilith influences are very strong there. And they appeal to people who have a certain kind of wound or a certain kind of personality that wants to find meaning in that and wants to understand that. So that's why you're drawn to that. But if you go far enough, you realize that there's typically certain kinds of characters that you find there, like the guru guy that's gropey, or women that are like I have um like sensual sex magic
Yeah.
group and sort of thing.
Yeah.
And again, it's not to be it's not to be shaming anyone. It's just like if you go down that rabbit hole far enough, you find this out for yourself, and you
Yeah.
see how there's people that are the literal embodiments of that. So there is something that is not progressive to human consciousness at this time. It's not denying the mysteries of the body, of the sex, of desire, of reception, and all of that era, which isn't of Lilith. It's just objectively like that feminine, earthy nature wisdom, really the Luciferic wisdom. And Steiner doesn't go into the feminine dimension, but he talks about um, Lucifer as not an evil presence, but as giving humanity the gift of that nature wisdom, but it's not integrated.
Mm.
And so understanding that is like, well, if you go back in time and you want to tune into those like mysteries of the body, you may find certain things, you may find meaning to your wounds, but over time, even your life will become a little deformed. Not maybe not in the most obvious destructive way, but you may see it in the kinds of relationships you attract, in the kinds of men you attract, in the kind of female friends you begin to have. And I think that that's the greatest indicator that it perhaps is not the right stream.
Right. It's basically using more or less sexuality as a force for initiation. And we know like that it has shifted. Like the center of initiation right now is in the heart, right? Where you are being asked to alchemize, to do the alchemy of all these fragmented parts of ourselves, right? And it requires us to grow up and to become individuals and to take more responsibility and to set some clear boundaries. What happens in these impulses that are on the like regressive feminine side is usually that people the boundaries are lacking, like there are no healthy boundaries, because feminine is the receptive part, right? It's the openness. And when it doesn't have a good container, right, it can then be open for anything. So that is the danger of going too far in this, like the extreme feminine, like the regressive feminine. I would call it like that. And yeah, Lilith is for me like seen as in a practical way. How I like to explain it to women that I teach is, when you are in the dark night of the soul, and Lilith would be somebody who never went up, a Persephone that never went up on the surface, somebody that didn't use the chance to be in that void, in the darkness, and to bring then the wisdom on the surface and then act from it, right? It's usually then the soul gets trapped into these dark circles, like the dark nights of the soul that kind of never end up. It just keeps cycling in this, in darkness, basically. And it never gets raised by the masculine, basically, impulse, which gives the order, the boundaries, the clarity, right? The total clarity. When that is not being combined, right, in a proper condition, then the soul gets deformed because it just stays for too long in such a far off, like, position, right, out of center. So yeah, and usually then people do have, then it kind of, the sexuality is being used as a vehicle to find God, I would say, to find this meaning, what you said, like it's basically we're searching for God. And
Yeah.
there was time when that used to be normal. It was part of paganism and the part of times that were before Christ. However, we change over evolution, right? We progress, we advance, we have now other faculties. And it's not that we have to deny, no, not at all, our materiality, our sexuality. It's not about that, but it is about purification. And so, and like purifying it through the heart, right? Through the love. So, how do you see this, like the definition of purity? How do you see it? And I know we talked about it also in, it can also go again, now in the other extreme, right? In the Aramanic stream, or some people can call it satanistic, or just like in the regressive masculine impulse, more or less. Just giving few terms so people can relate it. So, how do you understand Araman in feminine impulse, and you can touch upon purity as such part?
Yeah. Well, I see purity as, it's because I think, look, I mean, and I talked about this in another podcast episode that I had, or I don't remember where I talked about this, if it was like a reel, and I gave this example because this is a controversial perspective, that it's a great example of this. Is like a woman will say, you know, I can dress how I want, I can wear whatever I want, and I say this from someone, I love fashion, I love art, I love all of that. Like, give me the drama. So I don't come from a
Give me the
perspective
juice, yeah.
give me the drama. But the thing is, even if you dress modestly, there would still be an impurity, because it's an impurity of the mind. Mm-hmm. It's an impurity of the heart. It's an impurity that we have in culture. And again, if we look at culture as the embodiment of Lilith, really is the externalization of Lilith. What would be, imagine our soul. Each of us have a heart. Every single woman wants to be loved, wants to be respected, wants to feel beautiful. Imagine all of that perversed exactly how we see it. Just go on X, how they describe women. Is that not exactly what we're seeing? So impurity really is that lacking alignment with the heart, with the mind. And that link is precisely when you descend and you come back through the heart. A lot of people may come back through the heart, but it's kind of like the lower heart of this Luciferic bend of saying, well, I just accept everyone. I just accept everyone. And
No
you kind
boundaries.
of keep this exactly, and you may keep this kind of purity intact, but it doesn't have boundaries. And that's even, it's detrimental for a woman to not have boundaries, for anyone. And the reality is that we now have a self-awareness. Like people, I'm self-aware of how I may be perceived. You're self-aware of how you're perceived. We're all very self-aware now, so much that anyone's tone of voice, we're like, you know, are you being real with me? Are you being sarcastic? And that's precisely, I would say, even the influence of the I, the self-awareness, perhaps first the lower ego, right? But then in understanding that and really raising that through the mind, through the heart, is that there's this unification. And that's where you understand purity. That's where your mind is able to be prepared to look at something like modesty and understand it, that it's not just telling women, don't wear these kinds of clothes. It's our gaze. It's like in our eyes, there's this gaze that's been conditioned by all of the past, by all of the past wounds, by all of the things that have occurred throughout time. And it's coming, and I think that naturally that pertains really to the subconscious aspects of the mind. And it's coming forward now. And it's coming forward now as part of the purification process, because in order to purify the lunar forces, we have to look at that shadowy subconscious mind. So as it comes forward, it's like, oh, now we're self-aware. We're self-aware of, like, if I wear a top with this thing, I'm going to look this way. If I say these words, I'm going to seem this way. So we're all very self-aware. And I think that awareness, in having both the heart to give grace to ourselves, that we have a darker aspect, but also the mind, it being formed in a Christic way, in a Michaelic way, it's sharp. It's not sharp in an harmonic way, like you're going to judge yourself because you think certain thoughts or because you have certain desires, but that unification of the heart and mind into one. And then speech becomes purified, our sight becomes purified. What we look to in a woman isn't immediately, let me sexualize her. It's within. But it has to be an inner process. And I think it is an inner process that you experience in not just darkness of the soul, but just, I mean, every day we're constantly circulating all of those lower centers up, and then all of those lower centers up, all of those lower centers up. And I think sometimes there's elements that are very dense and that are very painful, and they get trapped in our heart, and our heart becomes subjective about it, and we become defensive of our pain, and we're like, no. And then that's why you feel so aligned with certain ideologies, is because you feel it protects your heart. And then your mind becomes harmonic in a way. It kind of densifies, and it wants to rigidify in that direction, because that's the direction that makes it feel safe. That's the direction that makes it feel included to other people who resonate to that kind of wound. Right. So then you have this whole situation of, it really is being an individual. But from a female perspective, the individuation process is really combating these two forces of like the heart and mind. Like the mind sometimes wants one thing, and then the heart wants another thing. And the heart's temperamental. It says, no, I want this thing. I feel this thing. It must be true what I feel. And we have to give grace for that. But there's also a sharpness. And that's what I really think is the purification process. Is it's not, even when you read mystical texts about alchemy and purification and these different elements, it's not just literal like sulfur, this and that, but there are different attributes of the soul, of the mind, of how it's being transformed through the Christ. And the Christ is really the alchemical force, and that's really the esoteric underpinning of Christianity itself, and why there's like a focus in Christianity. And like we'll talk about like the trad wives, like
I mean, please touch upon that now that we are in the Aramanic stream. And also I loved also that what we talked about is, you now mentioned, of course, the body, sensuality, and then in that term, like modesty being part of the, like it goes into also Aramanic stream when it goes like too far off, when the gaze is not being purified by Christ, then it doesn't matter. Modesty doesn't play anything. I mean, we have the most beautiful art of nudity and whatnot. How come we haven't sexualized that? Well, because there is something that purified it and put such a perspective on it that you're not being able to even see, something lesser than just pure godly nature and love, in the human body. So, but what I also found interesting is how this translates also into spirituality and spiritual experiences. Because when we talk about the feminine spirituality is very much subjective. So it's all about you and your intuition, and you with your inner connection with God, like your personal connection. And so what we observed is that when you are very much into this stream of Ahriman, we would say, there is something that then denies this and tells you, no, you cannot have your personal connection. You have to belong to a certain institution, church, community, and then you are going to be allowed to experience God through something else outside of you, right? Because Ahriman loves to externalize things. And so how do you see it, this impulse in spirituality, and also the topic of thread wives? I would like to hear from you.
I love what you said about the gaze and art, because it's true. I was just thinking about that the other day, like even art, because it's really an inner eye that has to be purified. Inner eye, get it? The eye. It's just, but really, it is that.
Yeah, the eye, the capital I purifies the third eye, right?
Both. But yeah, I mean, it is the inner eye that's being purified, and it totally translates into so many things, art and all of these different things. But how I see it, it's because it's in that purification, if it's externalized as needing to control others, And see, it's kind of the irony, because Ahriman opposes freedom, and Christian anthroposophy is seen as the force of religious freedom. So it's kind of ironic, this whole misunderstanding, because the whole purpose of purification is the purpose of freedom, for freedom to actually exist morally, where people are accountable, because then that inner eye is purified. But Ahriman externalizes that and says, no, let's just oppress other people's freedom. Let's just make things very dense and have people fight with each other about these like 2D, very earthly perspectives. And the truth is, two people could be true at the same time. But what's the higher truth? And the higher truth actually purifies, because it's like that intellect force that's coming down through the heart. And then it externalizes in culture. And I think with trad wives in particular, again, I'm not trying to be too generalizing here, because I think
it's just like a concept, a movement called Treadwives. It's
yeah,
not like one particular woman or so. It's more of a, like
yeah,
an impulse. Yeah.
because I mean, there's a nuance to everything, and I think that
Yeah.
it's like there's a truth that's being fought there, but it's often externalized. It's externalized as modesty means I dress this way, I adhere, and even it's interesting because many trad wives will say, "Well, I get married to a man," and it kind of it's externalizes this process of you when you descend, that descension is really the feminine process. And when you ascend is that masculine process, or the I coming forward in you. And that's really the divine marriage. It's not an external thing like a marriage. Now, can two people be very embodied and it literally manifest in that way? Of course it can. But the external face of it in two people is not the ultimate embodiment. It's a point of friction actually for us. But really it's those two parts of us, the masculine and the feminine, the yin and the yang, becoming harmonized. And in that harmony is when the marriage is consummated, when alchemy is born. And many people interpret that through a sexual lens, like, oh, it must mean I have to work through my sexual forces. And it's not, because again, it's like the area of action occurring is no longer in the lower forces, it's in the heart. And the heart's gazing at this tree. And if you really think about it, it's like the magician going like this.
Right.
And you look which of his hands is going up. It's his right hand. Which of his hands going down? It's his left. It's like the right face of God is balanced with the left face of God, the feminine. And so I think that trad wives, they look at that chapter of the spiritual worlds, and they look at that through a very materialistic lens, and they make it be in like law and order must mean men, must mean masculine, must mean church, must mean this. And you can imagine it's all externalizing. And now, are there real debates occurring there and questions that are being asked? Yes, of course. But the marriage is within, and the modesty is within, the purity is within. It's not in you dressing a certain way or even getting married at a certain age or anything of that. Like I said, like if it's in your free will and you want to do that and that's your thing, of course it can happen beautifully for some people, but I really think a lot of it is a cry for this inner process. But because sometimes the soul feels insecure to go within itself, so it externalizes authority as someone else to guide it. And then that's when people take these mysteries and misinterpret them, because then the source of guidance doesn't become Christ within you. It becomes, oh, Christ or my guru figure is my husband. He leads me. And they're the church. They lead me. And then it becomes harmonic. And then ironically, women will begin to resent themselves, because within you is no sense of true authority, no sense of real order. You haven't understood order from an inner place where you can develop a healthy relationship to that kind of discipline in a way that's not shameful, like the church, but because you're outsourcing it to a man or to the church, you begin to be influenced by their own projections of it. And nobody's perfect. The church isn't perfect. Men are imperfect. Women are imperfect. So we can't put that on someone else. We have to know it within. And I think Ahriman comes in our own wounds relating to that insecurity of trusting yourself, and instead outsourcing it to outer things. So that's how I really see the trad wife movement going, and Armand being even a source of shame, because then I think a lot of women, there's this earthly aspect of us. These feminine conversations are being had. What is femininity? What is femininity? Is it dressing this way? Is it? It's all externalizing kind of the subconscious lunar questioning of like,
Mm-hmm.
am I feminine enough? Am I sexy enough? Am I this thing? And it's like all of these archetypes at once in culture, all at the same time. So women then, in a way, through our own shame, our personal shame, we use and we take those externalizations that are like band-aids to this huge wound. It's like you need to go to the hospital, to the soul hospital.
Right, right.
It's like, but Aramon gives you these little band-aids, and they're
Yeah.
like intellectual thoughts. Like, well, if I just adhere to this belief of like, I wear these dresses, I'm going to now make that my personality. That's going to heal me. I'm on my feminine journey now. I dress with dresses now. I'm feminine now. But it's
Right.
all out now. Can those things be very healing to some people? Of course they can. But you won't find anything spiritually fruitful in any of those things. Those things can be healthy externalizations, but they're not compensations. And I think understanding that is very important.
Right, 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 right. And then think about it also, what I would like that we mention is this immense pressure then that comes from culture. Today we are also talking about the culture, and also what we observe is this, like you said, conversation about what does it mean to be woman today, and femininity, or okay, not just woman, femininity, because feminine impulses within men as well. And then we usually have some great, like, how to say, examples of it, who examples of different feminine impulses that are very prominent in our culture, and which impulses are being beamed and shaping the whole culture. And I would like if you can, like, because I think it will be interesting for people to understand what does, like, I will mention a couple of them, because we put, when we were preparing this, we mentioned in our conversations, like, people who are shaping right now a lot the culture is this whole impulse that went through social media, of course, but started even before through reality shows and whatnot. And we know that the Kardashian clan initiated this whole stream. So how do you see them? Especially we can touch upon Kylie, which recently became very much involved with even Aramanic stream. I find it quite interesting. I would like if you can touch upon that. And also that's like in terms of women, like feminine sexuality and how powerful can it be? Question mark. How much can it attain, right, through that? I speak about them because it's like a modern form of, I would call, dark priestesses that are now, on the scene. And also in terms of artists as well. You mentioned also in your podcast, like somebody like Marina Abramovic, who definitely embodies, like, and shows a lot of public dark rituals that are literally in front of us. And I don't see many conversations about it, like what does this feminine stream is actually doing to our consciousness. So maybe those two examples, if you can compare and contrast, I would love to hear your thoughts upon it, about the Kardashians and Kylie in particularly, and Marina.
Hermetic glasses,
The AI glasses, you mean? Yeah.
AI glasses. Yeah, that's just, I mean, I think for, I mean, this has to be said. I think before I talk about the Kardashians, is I think a lot of women, it's in their sexual shame. And I emphasize that in so many of my work in the sexual shame aspect, because it's there that I think people have such polarizing responses. Like, it's so disgusting what's going on with sexuality and all of this thing. But then at the same time, it's through our wounds of sexual shame that we enable that. And I think those women, the Kardashians in specific, have used this fallen Martian system to their advantage and said, well, I'll just play the system for myself. And that's the source of empowerment. And
Mm.
I think a lot of women have now begun to see through these thoughts, these new, especially through like the Christian stream, and saying, well, that's actually not constructive to us. We don't want that. That hasn't done anything empowering for women. But we still deal with the effects, the cultural effects of that, what that did to sex culture. Even the fact that the gaze of like women always being seen because they externalize that feminine principle of beauty and truth, right? Originally, that's what it was depicted in paintings. Now there's no truth, it's just chaos, and beauty is not even seen as like an inner thing. It's just an outer beauty is like an outer thing. Like, let me just get cosmetic procedures done.
Right.
And they epitomize that perfectly because they epitomize that rise to power, how it would look like within that harmonic system. And it's funny because it's kind of like that's how I see the harmonic influence is like it creates the structure, creates the false laws and commandments. And then women take on that luciferic influence. They say, this is freedom, this is great. We can do all these things. We can get baby Botox. Oh my God. And then they realize, wait a minute, we're actually being mined. We're being exploited. We're not setting good examples. None of us are winning. And this is horrible for culture itself. And so I think that those women, obviously, I mean, they come from a background in being prepared for that role and being shaped to be in those places of power. But I see them as epitomizing that false rise to power and darkened feminine consciousness.
Right, where like it's only, sorry for interrupting, where it's only about your beauty and your capacity to attract a lot of attention through your sexual energy, basically. It's not even like beauty. Okay, now it's more artificial beauty because of all these cosmetic procedures, but like this, like captivating somebody's attention through your sexual energy. They are actively using their sexual energy for attracting attention and money through that. So it's a high level prostitution, if I may say. I mean, which is so normalized and nobody speaks about it. Like everybody's just like, yeah, let's just, do this. You think that there's no consequences for that type of behavior. Like that there will be no consequences for your soul when you go down that path. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There are consequences, and I mean it's like such a deep conversation that I think like we can talk about this for hours because it's a conversation for itself.
Yeah.
And I touched on that in the concept of a sex slave in
Right.
that podcast. I went deeper into that because there's just so many angles to it, and because a person could argue about this or like talk about this from the perspective of watching the Kardashians and receiving their influence, receiving that magic, because it is a magic. It's high level glamour magic. Same thing with Marina Abramovic. It is high level glamour magic. It's literally the left, a whole inversion. And I mean, you could even go the conspiracy route. It's known that I mean, actually, I don't know if you knew this, but Kim Kardashian and Marina Abramovic did a collaboration.
Oh,
Like
I'm not surprised.
they had dinner. Like I used to be obsessed with all of the conspiracy world and that whole thing. So I've researched both of them. And I mean, obviously there's occult ties there, but of course, it's completely inverting all of these things. But it's because there is that fallen Martian system. And within that, there's a cultural framework. There's also an occult backbone to that in their occult beliefs, whether it's externalization through technology, externalization through beauty procedures, whether it's externalization of sexuality. That is what it is. Right. And it turns into a tool. Instead of sexuality being embodied and like you think of it channeling upwards, it's externalizing in how much shock, how much money, how much fame can I get? And many women, I mean, I think even as an adolescent girl, you're faced with that threshold because you're still at an age, and that's why it's so concerning for the world, is because when you at a certain age, I think we've all been there, is you're at that threshold of you're not quite so embodied in yourself that you fall for those external attempts. And they
Happened to
seem like,
everybody. Happened to me.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. So then you think like, oh yeah, well that's the easy way. And that's why it's so concerning, is because it preys on that innocent part of us that is susceptible to accepting that lie, to accepting that system. And so it's like a pit. It's that it really is affecting the youth. It affects culture. It affects the innocent part of us, because even older people, like, it never leaves. You become to be prepared within that. And I think they have obviously been used as a strategy to create that ideal for women and prey on the fear of women, of like, well, what if I'm not woman enough? What if I'm not sexy enough? What if I'm not? And you think of it, even these questions, and that's why feminism has very strong points. Has it been, has it expressed itself in very destructive ways? Yes. But at the core is a very real rage towards the masculine. And it's not men, although men can embody it, but the masculine is this really fallen harmonic Martian structure of saying, well, you're only worthy if you're sexually valuable. And I think they've, if it's like if there's freedom and there's people who do it and we're all watching that. Say you meet a man, suddenly you feel in yourself the comparison to be like that woman, to be like that porn girl, to be like the Kardashians, to be. And so it's this subtle comparison that even you see in social media, and it's amplified in our relationship wounds, in our wounds relating to beauty, and all of the natural human element thing that we have. And it's there that they get us, because they give us a lie. And that's what Armand does, is he's a deceiver. He gives you these densified lies, and they make logical sense. Like, if I wear that dress, if I post a thirst trap like this, then it must mean. And again, and then if people may hear this and go the other extreme, then we must deny beauty. Then we can't wear bikinis. We can't wear this thing. We can't wear. It's not about polarizing. It's really seeing how there is a very harmonic influence, and there has to be a purification that takes place, and looking at these people and seeing that if Lilith is culture, and I think women truly do shape culture, because they shape, do we have boundaries or not?
right.
Think about sex culture, think about all of these different elements that are kind of like the shadow element, the taboo element of our world, and nobody wants to talk about them. But yet we're all influenced by that. Your friends, I mean, experiences that women talk to each other, and everything, the way that we dress, the way that we interact on social media, everything is influenced by that dark and subconscious world. And if we cannot both give grace there, but also be sharp and point it out for what it is, it's a lie, it's deceiving, and it's destructive. And it's not going to give women anything.
Right.
Anything.
Right.
And
And
the truth, no, what were you going to say?
fine, please finish that, and then I will ask you something else.
Yeah, the if you really follow it long enough, you see how it is destructive so much that they have to associate themselves with transhumanism. And I think that's just the confirmation that what if you follow, you may think, well, something like the beauty standard, um, these sex cultures has nothing to do with technology, has everything to do, because it's we have to look at these spiritual forces as they're not working in like the spiritual planes, but the world stage, and every single facet of our lives, of our cultural life, of education, of everything is being modeled by them. And sometimes when people think of Ahriman, you look at like the spiritual meaning of Ahriman, but how it starts to play is it uses what wounds we have and the condition of the world that we have in order to then be able to deform things in a certain way so you're confused and you fall for the lie. And so much like now you see Kylie with the medical glasses, or I remember seeing Kim Kardashian with the Tesla bot, or like this robot that was like a year ago.
Right. It kind
And
of like makes it more like if you put, nobody bought meta glasses or anything. It was a total business failure of Zuckerberg. And then you like bring Kylie or any feminine figure that like makes it more like, oh, it's not so bad, or like it's more like it feels more safe because a woman is wearing it, right? And promoting it,
yeah,
not a tech bro, right? So I find it how I mean, we have to give them the cleverness, right? To go straight to them, because I mean, Lilith and Lucifer and Ahriman, they all work together, more or less. How they went to them to make this thing appeal more like, it's actually safe. You know, it's more like naive because a woman is wearing it.
More cutesy. No, yeah, I see it. I see it totally. And I've seen a lot of people point that out, how it is they know that women are the primary consumers. And again, people argue about this in like the economic aspect, and then the social aspect, but there is a spiritual aspect of like, yeah, the woman or the feminine, it is that receptive aspect. So if you can target women as the ones to say, well, let's just dress this way, this is what's normal, that I think has more power than any man saying, look at me, follow me, because
Right.
it's playing on that subconscious aspect of ourselves. And that I truly think is the most powerful part of the human. It's not consciously what someone does. It's like if you're talking to me and I'm like, look at me, and like in the background there's something occurring, you see that, you know. And we're all very, very now, especially because the veils are thinning,
Mm,
that it's very, we're all subject to that mind control, to that spell. And to also the other person who's doing the spell to have plausible deniability and say, well, I'm not doing anything, I'm just wearing meta glasses, I just happen to be wearing this thing. And even thinking about it, like, it's like there's a, and it's kind of funny, I think every woman can relate to this, like you do something and you know what you did, but you can plausibly deny it and
right.
say, well, that
You can rationalize it, right?
yeah,
You
and even
can.
within yourself, you're like, well, but then deep down, you know, and it's that, and that can hurt, coming to confront that part of ourselves that
Mm,
actually, no, we're not so naive. We know exactly what we're doing. We know exactly what we're seeing. These people know exactly what they're doing, and there's an accountability and responsibility people need to have, and especially, you know, but I mean, it's like, are they going to have it? They're not going to have it. So the question is not in them, it's in us. Do we want to continue creating this kind of culture, or as women do we want to set, and it's not just women, like obviously this is more of a feminine space, but it's everyone, do we want to create the world that we want to see? And
mm,
I think that that's when we'll get into like the Sophia aspect, but that's when
right.
we're creating the future. That plurality is not in us sleeping and just saying, well, we all think the same thing, like boop, mind control. No, it's like saying, well, we've all come to the same conclusion individually. We have an individual relationship to it. We've seen how the dark works. We see how it plays. We see the occult tactics that it uses. We see the lies. We see the places like the sexual wounds, like women's fear of not being good enough, the relationship. That's why even there's such a rise in trad wives, is
Mm,
because relationships are a central focus to it. So we look at all of that and we begin to take the sword and just go one by one, one by
right.
one, one by one.
Right.
And then that's really the future of Sophia, is
Mm-hmm.
that, is
Mm-hmm.
coming to that collective in a higher place of actually saying, yeah, we did it. We realized what the dragon Ahriman was hiding. And even in mythologies like Sleeping Beauty, um, the prince,
Yeah.
I love Sleeping Beauty, and he's just charging towards the castle, and he's with his sword piercing through the rose bushes, and it's really that eye, and it's not externally like the man's gonna come with you,
Yeah. It was
but
totally externalized, like you said, like it was about men, like an external man is going to come and save me. And it was all about the inner masculine, right?
mhm.
The Christ within. Yeah, I have to touch upon this now, because you did such a great podcast on on Christ and Christic wound. When we talked about this, so we talked a lot about now the regressive impulses, Lucifer and Ahriman, how it plays out in today's modern culture in our lives. And of course, the solution to it is Christ, right? You mentioned once in our conversation that Christ brings us through messiness into real beauty. So I would like if you can touch upon the concept of Christ and beauty, or let's call it conscious beauty, what that is, so that we can compare and contrast with the beauty that is now being served to us, which is very much soulless, artificial, right? And how beauty actually heals us, but it has to be, Christianized, right? So yeah, I would love if you can mention that. How do you see Christ, and how does he bring us to Sophia?
I love that. Yeah, I mean, I really see Christ. I think like that, even that word is a strong word, because when you say that out loud, people have different reactions,
Right.
because there's with everything going on with what mainstream Christianity has become, and completely, Ahriman has used Christianity to cloak itself, and people don't even realize it.
Through dogma, right?
Yeah. Into just externalizing the mysteries, the esoteric aspects is completely missing. And just like it's in Christianity, it will be in another tradition in the future. But understanding Christ is it's also understanding the lies within Christianity and how it's programmed people and removed that esoteric aspect of ourselves. And I think in conscious beauty, it's there's so many things to say, but really, you can't truly look at yourself fully if you don't go into the darkness. And when you go into the darkness, I think there's a pain that we all feel. It doesn't feel good if you've meditated and you feel all your thoughts and you feel like there is a part of you, and thoughts aren't yours, and now with technology, like being able to alter and literally project thoughts into someone's head, and then social media, that does not help at all, because it's literally that shadowy harmonic intellect coming into the forefront and using technology. But if you've really sat still and you look at all these thoughts, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to know that in you is at least you're receiving, or at least there's a possibility that you are capable of being a certain way, of being, whether it's extremely vain or prideful or angry, or looking at your past, because that's what Christ does. It brings to you your past, and then you look at it, and then there's a part of us that wants to look at it with our harmonic intellect. It's like, no, 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 like, let me moralize it, let me intellectualize it, let me just cut it through, because it wants to actually do that action of like charging through with the sword, but it doesn't have any grace.
Right.
So it only knows to shame. And it's so painful to see that that part of you is there, that there is a part of you that at one point did something to harm someone, or that has lied to yourself, or that has done things, even up to this day. Like, the more you go into your spiritual journey, the more intense it becomes. And
Right.
I mean, we talked about this before, and even you told me, like, after a while, as you get older, you kind of like those forces settle. And I think you couldn't have said it better, and that really sat with me. And it's true, those forces do settle. And it's really like those higher moral and spiritual forces, you can't force them out of you. I think people think that's Christ, because that's kind of like an external attempt at purification. It's like, if I just think happy thoughts, because
Right.
it makes me feel good. We don't like feeling bad. And I think that's really the tandem of Lucifer and Armand, is like
Right.
Lucifer preys on this part of us that comes from this infantile perspective of saying, well, if I feel good in myself, if I feel good in my body, if I feel good in my thoughts, then I must be good. I must be spiritually good. But then Armand finds us in that place of dissension and says, actually, no, it's the opposite. You are not good. And he's the deceiver. He keeps track of everything you do. And there's, I think, every single woman, there's a part of us that's like hyper aware. Like, I move my body this way, I seem this way, like imposter syndrome, all of these different psychological things. And then he takes that and says, well, see, I have the perfect case against you because you did it. It doesn't give you a chance to transform,
Right.
to
It keeps you
resurrect.
frozen. Yeah.
It freezes you. And you're like, I did it. And you can't even defend yourself. And if you really think of like Archangel Michael, like the defender, that's really like the esoteric mystery in that is like, it is the defender of the innocent, because we're not totally evil people. Like, yeah, we all have a dark aspect of us. But I think, and in women, I think that dark aspect weighs more because it's quite literally the polarity is receiving that. And then you're subject to a very dark culture, to very dark things happening in the world. And even if you open up psychically, like you start taking all of those things and you think they're yours. And then you're like hyper aware of everything. So in conscious beauty, I think it comes when you're able to come full circle with it, is you're able to feel beauty, not as a feeling, because it doesn't rely on needing to see yourself as good, on needing to feel good. It lies on the truth. And I think that that's when the mysteries really, even it's funny because even in so many, that's always interested in me, this part, like the Venusian mysteries of like truth and beauty together, and like so many mythologies, it's always the same. Like the fair maiden had the fairest of hearts, and you think of like that symbolism, and there is a truth to that. It is in the heart. It's in the heart being truthful, and sometimes what's true doesn't feel good, but it doesn't mean that it's going to kill you, and that's Christ. And I love this painting of Christ, and I used it for the Christic wound. It's like there's a side of Christ that's benevolent and graceful, but there's a side of Christ that's stern, and it is one with the Father, and says, well, and I think that that's where there's a struggle in women, because sometimes it's like there's that paralyzing fear of, okay, I was wrong. This wasn't right of me. Well, is there a chance for me to be better? And I think that's where Christ comes in. Is there's a transformation of the heart.
Yeah.
There's a purification of the mind, and it happens inwardly. And sometimes it guides you to change your mind, to quite literally change your heart, and change from an inner place. And it may externalize in like, okay, I need to reevaluate this perspective or this relationship with food or with sex or with whatever with my career, because Christ will find you where you don't want to look. And that's why it's so painful, because then I've even seen this meme of like people who are like, okay, meditate with your eyes closed. It's like, I'm meditating with my eyes closed. Are my eyes closed? And then you start overthinking everything.
Yeah.
Like, I have to meditate. It's had to take 3 deep breaths. And I feel like they can happen, this like over intellectual, like over like making everything be too literal. It can happen, and where we think that purification is like a linear process, and because it's not just a healing in like the psychological sense. Like you can intuitively know you've made progress, but on a spiritual level, none of us really know how much we've made progress.
Right.
We don't know that. So because we don't know that, there's an element of surrender and uncertainty that's very difficult, because you're subject to not seeing yourself the way that you want to see yourself. And that's part of beauty, because beauty is wanting to see yourself as beautiful, not just in the mirror, but to see yourself as a moral person, to see yourself as a person who does good for others. And when we experience ourselves not in that light, which is part of these times, it can be very painful. And I think like I've seen women talk about like the good girl complex, or like these different wounds that women have. I think when you descend, you find that toxic shame, which is really Ahriman, frees you in that. So when you rise no longer like objectively for the truth, but you rise to try to cover up, like put a lid on things. Like, no, what I saw down there wasn't true. I'm not like that. I'm like this. And then and it can even happen like in a career. Like you start externalizing all of your pain, because part of that is true. Like we learn through our career. And I know how many things I've written have come from me facing certain wounds. But I think even that, it's like it's all within, and that's why it's so difficult, because nobody sees it except you. And an angel isn't going to show up in your room and say, like, here's a star, good work.
Right, right, right.
You have to trust that within you, but within that, you're quite literally on a spiritual level building up higher forces. And you may not see it, but then those forces, they build up as almost thought forms. And then they start to come to you organically as an impulse, as a thought, as a tendency. And then that's really Christ in action. That's your body being christening. And it starts again in the places that are most painful to you and most difficult to reconcile. And that's because they're so painful. And because for most of us, it can happen in taboo places, is like if you externalize it and invite other people into that conversation, they may not understand because they're ones unique to you.
Right, right. Yeah, there is this secret element of healing which involves Christ, like you said. We know a lot nowadays in the trauma work and therapy world, so to say. We talk a lot about healing, and that's magnificent. I mean, we never had in the history so much publicly available knowledge about and practices about healing. However, I think now the next level will be, and it has to be, adding the spiritual layer to it, which is Christ. And what I like to always remember as much as possible and remind myself, it's not we that heal something, it's really the Christ that heals and does everything for us in our heart. So I think this is the point where then also in this healing part, you stop being so focused on how can I heal and feel, and stop, repeating these old patterns and all of that. And then when you learn to let then something higher than yourself, which is Christ, to do that part, to show you the way, right, the truth, then things then, like you said, then starts to shift, and then you start slowly, like you said, like certain thoughts and impulses and tendencies become available to you. You become more like drawn to them, and this is the Christ part, like which has to be said out loud, because there is a mystery in the word and naming the Christ as this force. And it's really like the most powerful force I've experienced in my life in terms of the level of transformation it's able to do when you surrender to Him, like to Him as this higher also aspect of you individually and also collectively, right? As hopefully future group soul. So yeah, I love what you said about it. And it's absolutely true that He loves us and accepts us in this messy part. There is grace to this messy and ugly side of us. It's not like rejected. It's gently touched upon and slowly like it rises, into something higher. And this is so beautiful because there is so much gentleness and yet sharpness, like you said, like this sharpness of saying this is something you have to work upon. You have to change this. And if you open up, it will show you the way, like it always does. That's how they work through us, angels and Christ. So thank you for mentioning that. What I noticed is that when we acknowledge Christ in our lives, it's only then that Sophia becomes more obvious, I think. What is your experience or your take on Sophia in this age? Like, we know what was Sophianic impulse before Christ. It was, like we touched upon at the beginning, very pluralistic, very community oriented, very tribalistic, right? And now, after like 2000 years of slow process of individuation collectively, we are not even yet there, but still, Sophia opens her doors again, and it seems like she's waking up, right? The prince has given the kiss, and she's slowly waking up. So how do you see the first signs of her in today's age? Because we talk about the feminine of this age.
I love the princess waking up. And I think she's, I mean, all of the feminine mysteries are incredibly enigmatic and for a reason. And I think it's because of that mastery of the eye and understanding of Christ. Because then, if we even talk about plurality, if we even talk about community, if we even talk about any of those things, they're going to regress back in a prior state of being. Like the model has to be etherized in the same way. Like I like to say it as there's structures, like there's world structures, there's it's like what Steiner said about the threefold social order, or he talked about so many different things. If we were to do that too premature, and we did that with people that are not aware, whether it's in culture, whether it's whatever it is, like these collective attempts, and we're not sufficiently individuated, then it it will regress back into a prior state of being where we have to renounce that, and it becomes this like technological or like even a psychological unity where nobody can think for themselves. But I see Sophia really coming in, especially in communities now, but niche communities being formed.
Very much.
And this move away, like I can't say anything cosmic because I really think that there's so many things that are yet to happen. And like even what Steiner said or what I've researched, Catholicism talks a lot about the Holy Spirit and all of that. They're very mysterious.
Yeah.
And I think they're intentionally mysterious because we have to master this. So I don't think there's anything like cool to say, but I do think a little ways that we are beginning to see that is in this understanding that people have that even this moving away from fame, moving away from this kind of like guru and huge audience and more into niche communities where people are begin to see, just like there's a group of individuals within the world itself, it's like spheres in between spheres, in between spheres, existing within spheres, and between spheres. And if you really look at like the spiritual hierarchies, how it's arranged, and all of these esoteric artworks, they're really like that.
Yeah.
And because that is the principle of Sophia, it's
Right.
multidimensionality. It's allowing multiple things to exist at once. It's allowing multiple truths to exist at once. And I think kind of the manifestation that you can see now is in multiple truths being able to exist at once, quite literally in these niche communities, and people being able to form different kinds of spaces with individuals that think for themselves, they unite themselves to that truth, but they coexist. And I think that's really freedom. That's the essence of freedom is, but also the truth within that and respect that people have towards each other. Is like it's not a totalitarian system of like we all have to adhere to Christianity, we all have to adhere to this thing or to that thing, or like even in politics, like what's done in one country, even like the individuation process, like in the United States, will look different than in Colombia, or will look different than in. I mean, there's even conversations that you can't have with people because they're not ready for it.
Right.
So it's also understanding. I think part of the Holy Spirit is understanding how many things can be happening at once. There's multiple timelines at once. And that's not to say that there's a higher timeline, which is where in this age, this is the time we're at, this is the task at hand, and either you evolve through the Christ stream or you devolve. Like objectively, that's true. But there's different points in time in which people are anchored in. And you can even experience it. Like if you go to Italy, you even feel time differently. You go to another place, you feel time differently. You take on the spirit of that land, of the people. And I think that multi-dimensionality of time and experience is in part how Sophia is coming forward and allowing that difference to occur, allowing diversity to occur, allowing people to come to their own opinion in their own land, in their own house, in their own time, at their own pace. Because we're not, I think when people hear like the Christ and we hear like, okay, the task is individuation, okay, this is the thing that's going on. Like we all think, okay, it's just a straight run, like we're all walking. it's just point A to point B. And we don't see, like, there's a whole series of earth events that have to happen. There's
Right.
a whole series of even personal events that have to happen. And even every single person's understanding of Christ will change. Like, when I'm older, there's going to be things that will happen to me. I will change. Everyone's going to change. And so I think that that understanding is really important in order to have this. I mean, even the fact of, like, for example, I can say, well, this is bad for me. But another person, for them, it may be right for them to do that
Mm.
because they are operating within a, like, there's a higher truth that we adhere to,
Mm.
but there's also a unique experience in how we come to that truth and how we are experiencing it.
Yeah.
And that's why, oh, you can going to say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love what you're saying. You want to add something?
Hmm?
Would you like to add or finish the thought? Sorry, I was just affirming, like it's wonderful what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's just, I truly think that that's where it's coming in, is in allowing that. And I think that that's creating the framework for the future mystery, which is that plurality.
Right.
And even what Steiner talked about, the Holy Spirit, from his perspective, had everything to do with purifying the astral body. So I think that even goes hand in hand with what we're experiencing in, like, this lunar world that's coming to the forefront, has everything to do with the old astral world, or like the lower astral space. And in that coming forward, we're truly able to free ourselves. Not freedom in, like, the Luciferic way or like these other understandings, but really freedom in
Yeah.
allowing other people to be, allowing different times to exist.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so many different ways that that's occurring, but that's really how I see Sophia.
Nice. Nice. This is so beautiful. I love what you're mentioning. Yeah, there is like this part of Sophia, the cosmic story of her that is very much veiled. Um, and it's very hard to decipher. Probably some of those wonderful sophiologists and Christian mystics who wrote about it in the beginning of 20th century or the middle of it can give some hints about it, but at this point it is not so crucially important to understand the cosmology of her, because it is very pluralistic. And I think the knowledge around spiritual hierarchies does come from her, from Sophia, this pluralistic, like seeing God as one and then as a whole hierarchy of angels, right? And us embedded within them. So I think that's so beautiful. But if we go to microcosmos, so to say, I think where Sophia definitely comes back is exactly what you pointed, is building communities, smaller communities, where we feel seen and accepted for who we are, and where we acknowledge, of course, the other people's truths, and we can coexist together in it. At the same time, I also see it as increased, very much increased intuition. I think they already are experiencing a lot of psychic encounters and whatnot. It's like from simple intuitions through, very, very strong mystical experiences, NDEs, right? We have all of that, like pretty much expansion of that, of individual experiences of God, right? So this is how I also see Sophia, as very like the mystery of mediumship, or the mystery of being a psychic, right? How does that work? So, because we remove this whole esoteric story from Christianity, I think she will bring this part and reintroduce it, like to the Christian stream, like how individually we communicate with God, right? So I think this is where she will open the doors for us, and also then through that higher intuition, we will find more of our souls, right? I wanted to say the soulmates, such as, for example, you and me, and it is really something that she brings us together. Like, she's someone that unifies everything, the whole cosmos, and also us. So I think people will experience more of this. Like, what people are craving for is this kind of sense of belonging. But again, it has to be not belonging in order to remove yourself, right, and to abandon yourself, but actually to belong to something higher than ourselves, but it connects us all. So yeah, this is how I see it. Would you like to add something now at the end of our conversations?
I think you said it wonderfully, and I see that as well. And even the kids that are being born now, they're very empathetic. Like you
Right.
see an empathetic ability or in self-awareness, even in the animals, like dogs are suddenly a lot more personable. And you could say, well, that's just, also humans are a lot closer to animals now. But everything, I feel like there's this deeper sense of unity that's coming forward. And I think it comes forward a lot in even understanding like the spiritual science, like a plant,
Yeah.
from how it is to a cloud, to everything in the world being enlivened in its individual principle, not in this like false unity, but in its cosmic citizenship that we all have. And I
Mm.
think that that's really, it's the cosmic ego that we're surrendering to and
Mm.
saying we're existing within that, within
Right.
Sophia. And even like the allegory of like Sophia bore the demiurgos, and then I think that rise is that, and like awakening to all of these little individual spheres and even seeing yourself within that great space. And then suddenly everything, it becomes enlivened again, but in
Mm.
an individual way.
Right.
And it's like a new psychic ability, like the clairvoyance of the future. All of these different concepts that you hear in like the mysteries, they begin to resurface now through that. So yeah, I see it. I see that.
Yes, yes. And I think also the part that we mentioned at the beginning, the somatic communities and somatic work is definitely part of preparation for that, like that we get
Oh
back
yeah.
to our bodies and healing our nervous systems and keeping it more resilient so that we can receive all of this higher wisdom and energy and then embodying it. So I think that's, yeah, that's definitely also part of it. Yeah. Oh, wonderful, wonderful. I really deeply enjoyed in this.
Me too. I love talking to you. We have
Same,
really good conversations.
same. We can talk for hours and this will not
We
be the
just
last time. Definitely not
we
the
just
last.
keep going live. We just keep going.
Sure. In between, I would like people
Yeah.
to invite people to follow your Instagram profile. I will link down below your Instagram profile, which is wonderful, and especially your Substack because it's exquisite in terms of the text.
Wait, I think your audio got cut off.
Okay, I hope it's now better.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I just wanted to, yeah, again, invite people to follow you, follow your Substack, watch your or hear, listen to your podcast because they're wonderful and there is so much that we touched upon, like a little bit during these conversations, which Andrea then expanded more on her podcast episodes. So do pay attention on that, and yeah, I will put all the links below. Um, Thank you so much, Andrea. If there is anything else you want to say as a last words, I just want to express a lot of gratitude to you for everything that you do, for all the wisdom that you share with us, and for talking with me tonight.
Thank you. You're always so kind. And I really enjoyed this conversation. I really enjoyed these conversations and everything, just having these kinds of talks with people. I think to someone listening to this helps them more on their journey and helps them more and not feel alone. Like there's sometimes
Right,
thoughts that you have by yourself and then hearing someone else, it's like you feel included.
right.
So I'm really happy that we're making spaces for others, and thank you for having me. I also have immense gratitude for this and for future episodes to come. I hope
Yes.
next time on me.
Right. We will arrange that. Okay, thank you guys for watching this. Please write us comments, questions, and everything that you might have. We're happy to read and to answer. And yeah, I wish you a wonderful day or evening ahead of you. Thank you so much, and bye.